Hey everyone, it's Ryan, and before we jump into this amazing interview we did with John Amaral, I just wanted to mention that around the 30-minute mark, right when we're talking about the physical effects that his healing practice has had on some of his clients, the topics of sexual assault and drug use do come up. They're very brief. We don't spend a lot of time on it, but if those are things that trigger you or things that you'd rather not listen to, we're past it by the 34-minute mark. So just that one little blip on the radar is something you're going to want to look out for if those are things that you'd prefer to stay away from. All right, here's our thing. Welcome to the True North podcast, where two practicing light workers get together to continue an ongoing conversation every week. I mess this up every time. So that you can live as your true self and follow your true... I'm going to start over. No. Okay. Take two.
Every time.
Only when we interview people. Welcome to the True North podcast, where two practicing light workers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can live as your true self and follow your true north. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby.
And I'm John.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, and we have a very special guest today. Yes, you heard him already. Today we have on our show Dr. John Amaral. John is an energy practitioner, author, and educator who has worked for over 20 years helping A-list celebrities, entrepreneurs, athletes, influencers, and thought leaders elevate their energy so that they feel and perform their best. So John has worked hands-on with thousands of people from over 70 countries, utilizing his energetic flow approach, which we're going to dive into today. John has been featured in the GOOP Lab Netflix series with Gwyneth Paltrow and has appeared on numerous podcasts. He's the founder of the Energy Flow Formula and the Body-Centered Leadership Programs, which combine cutting-edge neuroscience and ancient wisdom practices to help participants create and sustain new levels of energy, clarity, and fulfillment. So you can visit John on his website at johnamaral.com to find out more about him, and we will have all that information in our show notes. But this hour is going to go by so quickly, so I just immediately want to just dive right in here. Sounds good?
Let's do it.
All right. So in your the Goop episode with Gwyneth Paltrow, one thing that you mentioned is that you believe that the 21st century is the age of energy. So, this is sort of the first time that you've really let people into your world to really show them what you're doing. Why do you feel that?
Well, I think that it's weird, it's weird stuff, and when you show a person's body responding, and you're 3-4 feet off their body, and there is a moting that's happening, or somebody is having a wave-like movement in their body, or they are groaning or moaning or sighing, we don't have, in the culture, there is the models behind that, why that is happening, what the benefit of that is, what is actually, beneficial about something like that. And also the fact that it's real and it's actually happening are all things that are not, well integrated into the culture. So people see something like that and they go, what is this wackadoodle stuff? This is fake, or this is, just some woo-woo, whatever. And the truth is, there are some very, very sophisticated models behind, this kind of work, what I'm doing. And there are very specific outcomes that are being measured. And we want to make sure that physiologically these things are happening. We want to make sure that somebody's experience subjectively is matching certain things. We want to make sure, so everything is very outcome and result oriented. And so anyway, to show that just like a little snapshot of something without having a context for it, I felt for many years. I mean, I've been working with people for now. Let's see, I went into, this field in chiropractic originally, like it's been like 28 years. So to show it was something that I did not, I avoided doing on purpose because of that, because if people give a snap judgment really quick and then their mind might close down to what's actually happening. So it was a big move to show it on an international scale for sure.
So for someone who has not seen you on GOOP Lab or has no context for what it is that you do, how would you catch people up to speed on exactly what this work is that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's the big question. I think that there are a number of ways to answer it. I mean, one is that we know that a body that is physiologically coherent, where your brain waves, your heart rhythm, your body motion and movement, your respiration patterns, et cetera, when they're all synced up, we could call that the zone. We can call that a state of flow. But there's a very measurable, physiological state when the system is entrained in sync with itself and also the world around. And what happens is that it's almost like zero gravity, just like there's no friction, it feels like, or restriction. We think of something, we feel something, it's in sync with the world around us. Everything's in a flow. We're in resonance with the things that actually we want in a way to be manifesting, et cetera. And so that is what I'm cultivating and helping to kind of recondition in the body. And that is, I mean, there are a lot of people that have done research in this area, like Csikszentmihalyi was who's the Russian, psychologist and researcher that did a lot of foundational stuff on flow. We have people like Stephen Kotler who talked about it and brought it more into the culture more recently in a number of books. But there's a certain state of flow. And then there's another level, which I associate more with like awakening, which I associate more with higher consciousness, beyond just like a super focused state and super clarity, where mind, body kind of are fused into this one flow experience. But then also there's a transcendent aspect that's activated. And there's a knowing, a sense of being part of. People can have a more like a oneness experience. They can feel like totally connected to the cosmos within and around them. And that is, there are levels, there are levels of flow and there is a spiritual aspect to it, but I don't really, I don't go into it and say, oh, I'm a spiritual healer or I'm a, but people have experience of, hey, I exist beyond this like conditioned personality. And that is, so when I'm working with people, I'm wanting to activate that experience. One, I'm one with my body and I'm one with everything around me. And that oneness is an experience of the energy within and around me becomes one. And then I suspend the conditioned experience that I am a certain person, that my beliefs can be interrupted, my emotions can express that haven't been expressed. I can move forward in my life and make progress because I actually recognize that I am not X, Y, or Z. And that is a big, like, to say like, I do this, this is the technical thing that I do. We can get into what that is technically, but like actually the outcomes are more in this range. So
you were talking about like releasing and emotional expression, and I remember I did some homework on you, and you talk about that a lot. Like the body stores its story, stores its feelings, stores its energy, and then that storage can become stagnant, and then it doesn't get released, it doesn't get expressed, and then the illness and dysfunction kind of occurs. And what you do is kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like what you do is you allow the body to release that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely want to facilitate a release of energy that is no longer needed to be bound up, because when we do physiologically and structurally go into a fight or flight state, the body tenses up, the spinal cord inside your spine stretches. It can stretch a couple inches, which is, your brain and your brain stem is going down through your spine, and then it turns into your spinal cord, and then it connects all the way down to your tailbone. So all the nerves that are going out to all the different parts of your body are branching off of the spinal cord. And when you change the tension on the spinal cord, which is what happens when you go into a fight or flight stress state, it could be a physical injury, it could be an emotional, stressful experience, it could be just a psychological like revisiting of a particular event or circumstance or a concern about the future. It could be chemicals that we put into our body that or in the environment that put us into a stress state. They all do the same mechanical thing. They contribute to a tension that builds up in the central nervous system. And that changes literally the frequency of oscillation or the vibrational state of the cells. So the cells in the central nervous system actually begin to, imagine you take a guitar string or a bungee cord and you stretch it, you elongate it. Well, you're going to change the resonant frequency of that. And in the case of the spinal cord, the tissues actually become under tension, they're tractioned when we go into a stress state, and that shifts the frequency of vibration of the cells and tissues, and that changes the consciousness, it changes the growth function of the cells, it changes the communication, the sensory system is affected, like it changes the way we experience the world within and around us. And so one of the things I'm doing mechanically when I'm going in is I'm addressing the tension in that central nervous system. But the interesting thing is you can change it dramatically, not by necessarily trying to go and manipulate and physically, mechanically unravel things. It's what I found is with less force and more precision, you can actually kind of give the body, the nervous system, and the whole energetic system like vectors of information. You're like sending in like a test to see, like, do you like this? Does your nervous system actually feel rapport with this? Does it mirror back to the nervous system that, hey, there's a possibility to move into more space and more flow here? So rather than go into areas of tension, I'm going near where the spinal cord attaches into the spine, which is in the neck and tailbone area. So anyone who's familiar with like craniosacral work and different approaches that work with polarity therapy and stuff, these work typically with the ends of the spine because those are where you can influence changes globally most easily, because that's where the spinal cord attaches. And so I'm going in, but instead of trying to like manipulate or change, I'm actually giving your nervous system, your brain, your body, your information that it can use to self-assess and go, wow, there's actually space here, there's freedom here, there's flow here. Let me move my awareness and my body in this direction. And when you start focusing on what's working and where there's flow and where there's ease, what happens is you start to shift the system from a more mechanical, physical, material density into more of a wave, which is, if you think about what quantum mechanics and quantum theory goes into, it is everything exists simultaneously as both a particle and actually it's actually more of a probability wave at its core, that like the universe is mostly empty space, and in that empty space it's all energy. But the system goes out of like, I am Ryan, and this is how I articulate my body, this is the structure that I hold, these are the belief systems that I have, etc. When you start suspending that and the body goes into more of a wave probability, the whole physical structure moves in a wave. And that is weird for people to see. That's what, if you watch, on the Netflix, that you'll see is people's bodies are moving in a wave. It's because the system is moving from, I'm holding this posture and this tension that helps me define that I'm this, and I'm suspending that so that I'm moving into a state of like possibility, and I can create a new kind of version.
So you're not going into the problem areas where there's tension. You're going into the places where there's already freedom and space and flow, and just kind of like inviting those things to play and expand. And is that kind of what I'm hearing? Yeah.
I'm not going. So I'm locating and I'm defining where there's bound energy and where there's free available flowing energy, and then I'm putting the focus on where there's free energy. And so there are places that are if you think about an erogenous zone of the body, so just someone can blow on the back of your neck, someone could stroke your inner thigh, somebody could touch, an area, they could breathe, they could just look at that area, they could, and the sensory system can respond and completely shift your physiology, and create a completely different state in a matter of like milliseconds, because we're attuned to actually subtle input in that way. But when it comes to addressing the like problems and challenges and stuff, we usually go, okay, where does it hurt? Where is it tense? Where is it tight? What's wrong? Let's fix it. And so we go into where it's all bound up. But if you go into the field around the body and you interface with where energy is freely flowing, and then you help focus that awareness and energy into places where there's freedom in the body, you can actually get a very rapid global change in the whole entire nervous system and brain and body instantly with like just a tiny like touch. Sometimes not even physically touching the body. Sometimes it's just a very like just less than half an ounce, quarter ounce of pressure, and the whole sensory system can like use that. It's like I don't know if you have a dog or a cat and if you've ever kind of tried to take the string that holds the bag of food together and you try to like kind of take it out. Sometimes it's really hard. You can't find that one little thread that if you just pull it, it goes, it just kind of all opens up, right?
The magic thread.
The magic thread. And when it works, like it's just like, oh my God, that was so easy. But if you can't find it somehow, where it's like whatever gummed up, you have to like cut the thing apart. It's like, you're ripping it apart.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm looking for that little thread, that little access point where this whole system can self-organize around that input, because it's like, oh, there's freedom. Now we can spread that. And we call this physiological entrainment, when you have a rhythm, an energy flow that's accentuated, and then it begins to influence the areas around it. Because this is what, like, think of like drafting in riding a bike. You're in a pack of bikes or a flock of birds or a school of fish. They entrain. You sync up to, and you draft off of the energy of the others, and there's a kind of communication going on. Well, the body has the ability to do that internally. It can start to self-assess and say, am I coordinated and in flow, or am I fragmented? And if I can give you information in just the right way, where your brain goes, oh, wait, this is connected to that, they can start to sync up. I can get a breath that goes back and forth between there. This can actually put the body into what we call a state of increased physiological coherence, which means suddenly you're internally synced up in a way that it's more difficult, and this is research that backs this up, like it's more difficult for outer circumstances to throw you off of your flow. You're more open to and aware of yourself and others when you're more synced up, because you're actually more internally connected, so you could feel more. But you're less vulnerable to being thrown off, because something that is in sync or entrained or in flow is difficult for kind of frenetic outer energy to throw off its synchronization. So I'm like offering input that is going to help one become more self-aware and start to internally start a process, and that process then becomes their own process of them getting more internally connected.
So when you say you're offering, sorry, Abby, you go. I can see you inhaling to ask a question, and I'm just like digging into
I'm waiting. There's so many.
Yeah, you have a thing.
I'm so glad you talked about entrainment. That was actually one of my questions. But I want to go back to a question I had about flow. And so what I'm hearing you say, though, is when you were in that state of flow and everything is physiologically kind of lining up, did I hear you say right that it's almost impossible for outside influences to trigger you?
It's much more difficult. So
okay,
it's much more difficult for outside influences to throw you off. People when you start opening up and you start feeling more connected and you start feeling more in flow, you start feeling more kind of raw and vulnerable and exposed, because you're feeling more. Your heart is actually engaging. You're getting out of a protective fight, flight, freeze mode where your kind of focus goes like this, and so you're less aware of the subtle and what's happening around you, because it's not physiologically in your best interest to be like, oh, I feel everything. It's so beautiful, when you need to be protecting yourself, right? So that starts to sort of shut down. And when you start to open back up, you feel more. So now you're more connected to what's going on around you. It gives you a number of benefits. One, you feel more, and so you can respond to the more subtle things that are happening before they have to get really loud. But you also, like, to your question, you are less vulnerable to being thrown off, so you can actually handle more, and you can choose then, like, okay, do I want to remove myself from this situation? Do I need to do some kind of behavior or action here? Do I need to say yes here or no here? Like, you're more able to navigate it because you're not in reaction. You're in more of a responsiveness.
Sure.
So you're most people are in reaction and don't know it. Their body's in vigilance and protection, and then things are happening around you and it feels like it's happening to you, versus you navigating from a place of this like centered, connected flow state.
Okay.
Does that answer that?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we've had some questions about when you are in a relationship that is not necessarily psychologically safe. And for some people that's been, their own spouse, their relationships. And so, that was my question is it possible to stay in that flow when you're in that type of relationship, or is being in that flow kind of opening you up to realizing that this relationship is not serving me, right? Like it makes you more responsive.
That's a great question. And so one of the things that I've experienced over many, now it's been decades of working with a lot of couples, this is an area where most people have challenge. Probably the great is like intimate relationship, personal relationship, right? So we have challenge, whether it's family or it's an intimate partner, spouse, whatever. And as you get more connected to yourself, and you get more in sync with your own rhythms, and you get really clear with what I want and what I don't want, what works and what doesn't, then your boundaries get clear. It's easier to begin to say, you know what, this doesn't work for me, or this is what I need. You can speak up, you can express, because your inner experience of coherent flow leads to wanting more of that because it feels so good. And when you get thrown off, you're like, no, I don't like this. So then you start looking in your life at what is throwing me off, what are the places that are triggering me. And of course, in intimate relationship and personal relationship, we're going to get triggered, because that's why we get into a relationship, to see where we're, where are we, maybe not as evolved as we thought we were. And where might there be a growth opportunity, and how can I, learn to, know myself more and serve this person and serve myself and serve the world through this relationship. And it's like, we're going to either move toward clear communication and expression, which then allows for progress to happen and healing and movement, or we're going to see like, wow, I got into this relationship with all these wounds and challenges and everything, and like, actually there really is not progress going to happen here. I've done everything that I can. I'm clear. I'm expressed. I'm this and that. And then really, like, this is not a match. So some people will move into that relationship, and some people, it's just very clear that it's not. It's not really. One woman I worked with years ago, God, it's been probably 15, 16 years ago. She was pretty young. She was in her like mid-20s. She was in a relationship. She was engaged. She was in college. She was doing everything for everyone, her parents, for like her rules about things, her family and what everyone thought, her friends, etc. And so she got on the table. I did a session with her, and like everything just like opened, and she completely cleared like every attachment in that moment to her, who she was supposed to be, how she was supposed to be, all the tension and stress that was built up just totally cleared. And she was like looking around like, what is this like world that I created here? Like, what are these relationships that I'm in? Like, who was the me, that what version of me was actually engaged here when I got into these? And so she ended up going home, and she ended up having a deep conversation with her fiance, and they both agreed that it was like, you know what, we're trying to force this. We're not really, this isn't really what we both want. And then she ended up realizing that she was in school for her parents, and she did all these things, and she ended up changing like everything in one session. And she ended up moving to Italy and signing up for like a culinary institute and wow. So sometimes you're living your life in such a distorted way, but you don't know it. You don't realize it until there's an awareness that comes in, because you get so clear and so connected and so knowing that you are realizing that you have to change all these things. And sometimes it's just more, you're on the path that is in flow and is, it's good. And the relationship is good, but there's not enough, there's the full passion and expression isn't there, or there are places where you're hiding things, you're afraid to be totally,
Sure.
honest and authentic and stuff. And then you work on those things and you go, wow, okay, let me just express this. And it gets easier. And then you get to deal with the places that you were maybe avoiding, or you were afraid to be who you really are. And that shifts things in the direction of a more intimate, powerful relationship. So it can go either way.
Sure. Absolutely. So that kind of brings me to my next question. So in your fight or flight to flow challenge, which is free on your website, and Ryan, have you done it? I know I have, because I loved it.
I have not done it yet.
So, but you talk about the paradox of change, that you truly cannot change yourself unless you first, until you connect to your body. So is that kind of what you're saying, what you were just describing about relationships is, finding that flow is really about getting into your body, and that's the only way you'll be able to really make.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think finding flow means being with what is without judging it or trying to change it before you're with it, right? So
Yeah.
And usually the body, the role of the body is that it's physically, physiologically, somatically in our body. We can check out of our body in various ways because of different stresses and traumas that start shaping the way we act in the world out around us. And so the body becomes we have this vessel of the body. Here we are incarnated. We have this body. We're like, hello world. Like here we are in the 3-dimensional world. And this becomes an interface, a place where we can actually recognize and start to learn about places where we have lost, we've lost awareness of ourselves or of a particular pattern. And that's like shaping things that are happening in the way we're acting toward this or that. So it becomes first like reconnecting, right? Reconnecting to our body, to our energy system, and feeling the places that we were not feeling, the places that we avoided either consciously or unconsciously. And for a lot of people, they store a lot in the kind of visceral system, which is like the fascia, the central nervous system, the muscles and tendons, the connective tissues of the body. We store information and energy that didn't get to be fully processed. And so somatic or physical energy, and it becomes a way to start to connect to that which wasn't being felt. So like, for example, you might have had abuse, or you might have had an injury, or maybe a parent left when you were young, or maybe you didn't have like bonding early, or there was a traumatic birth, or whatever it was. And your body and being experienced this loss or this, overwhelm or whatever it was. And your body went into vigilance, or went into fight or flight. You in a way, you fragment or freeze parts of yourself up, because your brain just can't deal. It's like your higher brain, which is still developing as a child, it can't deal with all this input, and it doesn't know what to do. Someone's touching you in a way, or someone's holding you down, or physically hurting you, or any number of things or ignoring you or whatever, and you just don't know how to process that. So you have to do something with the energy. So you shove it places. You literally fragment. And so to me, like, healing is like you're returning to the whole. That's coherence. You're returning to a whole, fluid, interconnected system, which we are. And the parts that were unable to be experienced have to be experienced on some level for you to like return back to wholeness. And that's what I mean by the paradox of change. You have to feel, at least register in some way, and just be with that energy for a moment for it to integrate. Otherwise, you're just constantly trying to get rid of things, and you're trying to like, this happened to me. I've talked about it. I figured out and I just want to focus on what I'm grateful for and what's positive, and I just want to go to like create a new life for myself. But I never want to experience that. I will never feel that, and I will never deal with that because it's like too scary or whatever. Or I don't even know that it's there because I've hidden it so much. So we don't have to re-experience the trauma. We don't have to go do this deep digging into it and like go, we just have to register for a moment. There was energy that we couldn't feel. It was held as physical tension in the body. It can get integrated and dissipated. It could be as much as just like a moment of like a sound. It could be a whimper or a cry. It could just be a release. But once that's dissipated, you no longer have that charge there. You no longer are referencing that as a way to kind of move your life forward. You release things that were held in your body that served as like hooks or anchors to that experience. Once that happens, now you're, in a way, you're free of that. So that paradox is like, be with the energy for a moment. Don't be afraid to go there. You to say don't be afraid is like, of course we're terrified, but we don't even know it because our brain is like, I cannot deal with this. So it's
make up the story of what it's going to be.
Totally. And so then we make up a story that protects us from actually going there.
And that's right. Just repeats.
Yeah, we make up a story about who we are or who we aren't, which helps us not feel that or to move. A lot of achievers are driven by not ever feeling a certain thing again. Like that happened to me. I will never go there. I will never let that happen to me or anyone else. And so amazing things get created in the world, moving away from things that we haven't been able to fully process. But that doesn't mean that we're integrated and healed.
So when you're talking about people returning to wholeness and feeling those parts of themselves that didn't allow themselves to feel, it expresses physically in some way, and that's like the weird stuff you were talking about. People don't really know how to handle when they see or observe. Is that the you were talking about people moving in waves or breathing or exhaling? Like this can come out of the body in some really odd ways that we don't really have categories to internalize or to even make sense of when we observe it. So when you first experienced people responding to you that way, what was your reaction?
Well, I remember I was early in my practice and I was working with a woman who had, it wasn't on her history because I take a very comprehensive history because I want to know what are you aware of that went into the mix? So it's like 4 pages of very, what was your birth like? What were the emotional, and physical and chemical and all the different kind of stresses that happened, any surgeries, any this, any that. So any accidents, etc. So it hadn't shown up, but she had been raped as a early, in her kind of tweens. And I just I went and I explained what I'm doing. I'm going to go down to your tailbone area here. I'm going to put a very light pressure right here. And I, put about a 1/4 ounce of pressure on her coccyx area, the tip of the tailbone. And she just let out a scream, like a blood curdling scream. She completely started to hyperventilate. She started to moan and writhe, and then she went into fetal position and she was bawling and shaking, and then she rolled off the table and went under the table and was under the table in fetal position, screaming. And then she was get away, screaming at me, but she wasn't screaming at me. She was actually reliving an entire rape, sexual abuse. And I was I didn't know. I knew what was going on. I was aware of what was happening, but to be able to be with that and then stay with her and just move through this whole process, that was in my first year in practice. So you do that, with thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions, and you kind of experience everything, people reliving things, people releasing things, people having awakening experiences, people, retracing or going through traumas, people tasting and experiencing and getting high off drugs that they took in the 60s and 70s, having that come up in their breathing, and they're feeling it and tasting it and smelling smells that they hadn't smelled. The body will, as it liberates energy and shifts the body out of fight or flight, you start feeling and registering things that you hadn't oftentimes experienced or felt, or you remember things that you hadn't remembered. So, it just now at this point, I'm ready for anything that may come up.
Yeah, absolutely. That blows my mind. I want to go back to sound for just a minute. So we have a group that kind of follows us. We call them our tribe, and we ask them to kind of put some questions out, and sound happened to be one of them. And I also want to talk about it because in my experience, so talking about reliving things, I was sexually assaulted and have some abuse also in my childhood. And so when I went through your fight or flight to flow challenge, that specific day where we talked about releasing sound, I didn't relive the experience, but I felt that letting go, exactly what you're talking about, just this release of it. So what is the significance of sound? Why is that so powerful with release?
That's a great question. Sound, there's a number of levels, so I'll kind of unpack it. So you have acoustic waves are one of the ways that the nervous system communicates, and it's below the audible spectrum here, but we have acoustic information wave transfer in the body. It's in the form of what's called solitons, which is like, you think of a tsunami moving across the ocean. It can get generated off the coast of whatever, Argentina, and then it can hit all the way across the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean or whatever, and it can hit the shore of wherever, Japan or something. So what happens is there's a type of waveform that actually carries information, but carries it in a way that it can travel long distances, like with very low loss of information. And a soliton is that. And so the body is communicating with vibration and frequency and sound. We also have a nervous system and an limbic or an emotional brain that processes vibration and sound. So like when we have an emotional experience, if we really express and allow that to truly move through, we will move our bodies and we'll make sound. So even if it's like the lip is quivering, we're taking a breath, like, that's emotional. That's an emotional expression. If someone's speaking and there's an audience of people and the people are resonating with what that person's saying, you'll hear like, you'll hear people like making a sound because there's an emotional connection there. When we're pushing on an object and we're emoting and expressing, we'll groan and grunt. When we have an emotional expression, there's always some kind of sound involved, and there's movement. Those are two things that are required for emotion to express. So what happens is if you have a strong emotional experience, but you don't express the sound and you don't move your body in a way that matches that frequency, you don't dissipate the energy. So you have a strong feeling, but you don't actually translate it into an emotion. So people say, well, I feel a lot of emotion. I feel every day. I range from sad to like angry to, all these different, I feel joy. I feel these things. How much of that is actually expressed as sound and movement? If you're feeling strong emotions and feelings, but you're not expressing it as sound and movement in any way, shape, or form, then the system doesn't necessarily discharge or dissipate that energy, and you can bind that, you can hold that energy in your body, literally in the tissues of your body. So that's what happens when you kind of consolidate or fragment off strong emotional experiences, and your higher brain, the cortex of the brain that can like assess and evaluate what's going on, and actually make up a new meaning for it, or recognize that I'm safe and I can let this go, etc. That part of your brain, when you're in fight or flight, gets hijacked in a way. It gets temporarily shut off so that you can focus on the moment, what's happening, and you can react. When you reconnect that up and the higher brain gets activated, blood flow is going now back to your higher brain, your body's coming out of fight or flight, your brain and body goes, oh, it's safe now to finally let this go. And now you can go, people will start to express, naturally emote, because that energy now can move through sound and motion. And oftentimes people weren't expecting that at all. They didn't realize there was anything even there because they had disconnected from it.
Everything you're saying is making a lot of sense. Like, I kind of feel like you're painting a picture of throughout somebody's life, they'll have experiences, we can call them traumas, that cause them to like close off certain parts of their body, and the things that they feel from those experiences are contained within those parts of their body, and they basically just close the door, lock it, never opening it again, never need to go in there. And then what you're doing is you're just essentially inviting the body to open those doors and let out what's been in there this whole time, which then your signal for knowing that that's happening is sound and movement.
Yeah, sound and movement. It's not always, it can be very subtle. It doesn't always have to be like, matter of fact, it can be very, very, very subtle, almost imperceptible where you can't hear it. But like the breath will change. There'll be some tonal shift. There'll be some expression where the vibrational frequency that was held, like consolidated or compressed into an area, can now begin to spread. For some people, it's a more visual experience. For some people, it's much more kinesthetic. They feel it through their body. Some people, it's much more sound and expression through their body with movement. Some people, it's more of a feeling of sinking into their body and kind of everything opening up. And then there's and that's the emotional experience. Some people, it's like, it has to come out like this. It's just different for each person. And some people, the energy that's been bound up and may start. Maybe it was around some kind of like stress pattern where they were doing a lot of drugs or drinking a lot of alcohol in the liver and the kidneys and the whole detox system was kind of offline, and then it kicks back in, and their discharge of energy is a lot of chemical release into the bloodstream, and they go, oh, I feel this big detox. So the way that the body starts moving that energy is different in each case, but always in some way, shape, or form, there is going to be an increasing frequency or vibration of the tissues, which is going to have some emotional expression, whether that's a strong one or a subtle one, and sound and movement will be involved.
Interesting. So this leads me to something that for a long time I believe that if you can manipulate and change the energy within your body, that will change your cells, kind of like what you're talking about. And then that should reverse anything that's going on with you physically. So like I've always thought that I have my thyroid underproduces. And if I can change that frequency around my thyroid and I can change it on a cellular level through my vibration, that the thyroid should naturally just start to function and produce the way it's supposed to. But one thing I heard you say is in the GOOP episode is that it really is, you want this energetic medicine to be in conjunction with allopathic medicine. And so why do we still need medical intervention if we're able to kind of change our bodies at that cellular level? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I've worked with people at all stages of cancering and all kinds of different conditions, and disc injuries and different things where you go, it is because absolutely seen people have incredible changes with all kinds of conditions where they're there, and then through them getting more connected and through the body's self-healing or self-organizing mechanisms getting kicked in, coherence, entrainment, they heal, and you go, wow, that's amazing. That's like how spontaneous remissions and things happen. Like the system gets so clear, you no longer need that that pattern. But there are people that actually are in a way so far kind of beyond, like their physical system has gotten run down to the point where they need to buy time in a way for the system to be able to heal. Like there was one person who had cancer, and I recommended that he go ahead and do the chemotherapy and do the surgery that was being suggested, because he was so totally disconnected from his body, and he was completely out of touch with his body for his whole life. He had been living like completely in his head. And I said, he had stage 4 cancer, 3 going into 4. And I said, we can go on this route of like, we need to initiate and get your body in a healing mode, but we need to buy enough time so that you can actually heal. So sometimes you have to do an intervention to buy somebody time because they don't have, they've never practiced or worked this in a way. So sometimes that is the case. And, but sometimes people that have never had any kind of healing modalities really, they've always treated everything with medications, et cetera, can have a handful of sessions and things just massively shift, and things that were there just like begin to resolve. So it's a case by case situation. And I think that there's value to all these different modalities. I think we're moving into like the 21st century really is the age of energy. We there are many different usages now of frequencies. Like in Europe, there are trials being done where they're using specific frequencies to target them into the cells, where they can select the frequency that will vibrate the cancer cell at a frequency that makes it explode but doesn't harm the surrounding tissue.
That's awesome.
I met yesterday with a woman named Susan Paley, who's the co-creator of Beats by Dre headphones. And she's moved into a new venture where she's it's called Drop Labs is her company, but she's made a shoe that sends frequencies into your feet.
No way.
That now it correlates with music you're playing, but also can connect into meditation music. It can put different theta frequencies, alpha frequencies, gamma frequencies, or video gaming or virtual reality, and it can start to shift your energetic frequency in your body. So there's another company I'm involved with called Waveform One, which is putting LED light and using LED light to take frequencies into the body that can like homeopathically in a way match or mirror something going on with you. There are just many more devices and things like that coming on board. So I think we're moving in that direction. The mechanisms, like why the body responds to frequencies, coherence and lack of coherence, etc., are things that have been researched. That research is now starting to be a little bit more available to more people, and there's an interest in the culture in energy and energy healing and health in a different way. And I think this is where we're going. We have a ways to go because we don't have all the data yet, because there hasn't been enough research on how we get into and out of those states. I mean, I have hands-on experience with tens of thousands of people over the decades here. So I know what it feels like when someone is out of sync. I know what it feels like when different types of stored tension in the body around different kinds of traumas and stresses. And I know through working with so many people that when someone is moving quickly in the direction of more flow, and I feel like they can, I feel like they can actually self-organize and reassimilate things more rapidly than other people. So it's a case-by-case situation, and I would never suggest anyone abandon allopathic approaches in favor of just doing something like energetic. But at the same time, some people, that's what they need to do. So it just depends. It depends on the person.
So is that why you developed your fight or flight to flow challenge, just from all this experience, and like this is sort of the way for you to get into your own flow, just that introduction?
Yeah, it was a way to like take some practices or some ways to use our breath, movement, patterns of our body to at least get a taste of what it can feel like when you start to move into some of these states. And those practices, for some people, they're extremely profound. For some people, they feel like they're more in their head and they're having a harder time like really getting it. So like an immersive experience where I'm actually able to work on someone, or in an event environment or group environment, we can like really create that immersion that gets you out of like more of the cognitive mind. Because sometimes people are doing the exercises and they're like assessing and they're going, am I doing this right? And But it was my way to give at least an element of what I'm doing. And we had people from all over the world participate in like over like 100,000 people participated in the challenge so far. And it's like a really incredible feedback that actually exceeded what I expected. Where people were just saying like, I completely forgave, I someone in my life, I was bawling, I was unraveling all these things. So, I'm super happy with the reception of that element. That's one aspect of the work.
Sure.
One of the things I keep hearing you talk about is how people come to you, like we think about energy healers and we think about healing, we think about solving body problems. Like I'm an energy healer, and I have people come to me and they're like, oh, here's my shoulder or my throat, or they'll talk about something in their body. But then by the end of the session, we're not talking about their body anymore. We're talking about their life, and we're talking about their history and their childhood. And I've got this idea that there's this triangle where you have your energy body, where your energy is flowing and all the invisible stuff. You have your physical body, but then the third point on that triangle is your life story. Not like your history, but like the story that you're writing right now. And that's like actions, behaviors, internal monologue, the tangible stuff that other people can also touch and feel and see. And so I'm just now getting to a point in my own healing journey where I'm trying to approach all three of those. Like, let's talk about your energy body and how that affects your physical body, and let's talk about your physical body and how that's creating your life story, and how your life story is then affecting your energy body. And all three of those not only need healing, but it's almost like all three of those things need the exact same type of healing. And so I love it hearing you talk about you work on somebody or they go through a thing and then they go and forgive somebody or they go and have this other experience that you wouldn't think would be tied to energy healing or body problems, but it is.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and there are a couple things I'll speak to with that. So one is, there have been so many cases where people are on the table with me, I'm working with them, or they're at an event with me, and someone texts them, or reaches out to them and leaves a voice memo or something that they haven't talked to in 10 years, or they had a falling out with a estranged family member, a sister or brother, or some like lawsuit they're in, and the person is like, you know what, let's just like settle this and deal. Like, because of this principle of entanglement is the way I see it, that when you are in a relationship energetically, and this is like a real thing. I mean, there's been 25 plus years of research done at Pear Institute, which is the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, where they've looked at people's ability, their consciousness to affect inanimate, random event generating machines. So we know that like consciousness has an impact even on a random number generating machine. So we can actually subtly influence the material, but the non-biological systems we can influence. So there's some kind of entanglement with our electrons and the electrons of that device. So it's dramatically more in people. I mean, we're entangled with them. So when we make these shifts, they're shifted, and so that happens like so often where people have the shift, and then something changes in these dynamics, and what I experienced when what you're speaking to, Ryan, about the story, about our life story, my experience with when energy, energy organizes matter. So like if there's a high level of energy available, then and there's a certain level of consciousness or awareness, then the form of energy will actually create material matter in a certain way. You can see this in like something like cymatics, which is the study of how sound frequencies influence physical matter. So if you put sound energy at a certain frequency with a frequency generator onto a plate, and that plate has salt or silica on it, it will start with different frequencies. It'll start organizing it in different shapes, right? So our thoughts and our stories even are organized by a certain level of energy. And so when you shift that, either raising the energy to where you go in a way beyond the story, your story can instantly change. Your whole sense of self can change, where then that story is completely irrelevant. It either just vanishes or it completely shifts or changes. So I've had that happen so many times with people where they were like trying to work on changing a belief. They were trying to work on changing their story. They were trying to see from their mind, they were trying to change the way that they were thinking about something and do their declarations and affirmations and doing all this stuff. And they momentarily blipped up to a higher energy state, and they shifted to a more expanded consciousness, where all of a sudden they had a vantage point that they are not that story. They're not even their mind. And suddenly it's gone. It's like completely malleable and changeable. So I feel, and I know that the content that's in the mind will always play out in different ways. But the mind is like a generator of content, which isn't even in our head. It's not just our mind. We're connected into a collective mind, and we think that the thoughts we're thinking, the story that we're telling ourselves is our story. We think that it's literally our mind. And the truth is, it's not. We're more of an antenna tuned into a collective mind consciousness. So as we just keep transcending and elevating and expanding, we start to recognize that we're not any of that. And it frees us from the story. And then we can reinvent our life out of a place of choice, of just saying, oh, I'm making all this shit up anyway. Like, I'm making it up. So why not make it up in this way? And then you'll hit another limitation, because then another part of you realize that, oh, well, I'm limited because I actually now feel like I can go to this level, but I'm not, for some reason, this isn't manifesting. And you go, okay, well, am I really am I limited? Okay, well, no, I don't feel like I'm limited. But then there's who's the one asking that question even? And you start expanding out into higher and higher sort of more elevated aspects of consciousness. And you start to recognize that the one that's observing, and this gets into more awakened consciousness, right? The one that's observing is always a limited aspect of the truth, which is like pure infinite consciousness, which is what we are. And so we continue to kind of evolve and grow and integrate these parts of us. And the body's a big part of it, because we can integrate parts that have been fragmented and pushed aside and held. And then we start to realize that I am an infinite being. I am unlimited. I am the universe itself. So I can make up, in a way, any kind of version of myself that I want to in this moment with the amount of awareness that I have. And I'll just keep kind of peeling away the illusion of what I am or what I'm not. And then I'll keep remembering more and more what I am. And it's just, that's healing, really. That's the evolution. That's the journey.
Peeling away the illusion of what I'm not, continuing to remember what I am. I'm going to Instagram the shit out of that.
Okay, I have a question about, this is going to sound funny, but I am going somewhere. So I notice that pretty much all the time you wear black. Mm-hmm. And so I'm studying chromotherapy and light therapy and how the frequency of light can help heal you. And in my studies, what I've read is that somebody that predominantly wears black, it like weakens the energetic system because the black absorbs the frequencies that the body needs, right? So I'm curious if there's a reason you always wear black, especially given, what you do in moving and manipulating people's energies. But I'm just curious, is there a reason, or is that just sort of your uniform, so to speak?
It's kind of more my uniform.
Okay.
It's not, it's interesting because there is research on, of course, the effect of color and white being the spectrum. If you notice, like my house is pretty white back here, so, right. But white is the entire spectrum, and so you see like that, like we typically think of like our healer people as like they're going to be in like white robes and like
right.
So I just think black is cool.
Well, no, that makes perfect sense. I wear black or navy, like dark colors, when I'm working with people, because I have a tendency to soak up their energy, and for me to kind of stay neutral, I don't want that to influence my intuitive process that I'm working with them. And so it's time to go pick up my son, everybody. Sorry, my alarm just went off. And so I was just, that was one of the first things I noticed, especially in learning all this chromotherapy stuff. I'm constantly paying attention to what color people are wearing. And that's why I noticed.
I just feel better. I mean, I have like all white. When we go to India and we're doing like, we're at this, we've done a number of events in India, and we're like in all white, in our. So I mean, it's not that I'm married to. I have to wear black for some like very deep, profound reason. I feel good.
Yeah, comfortable. That makes sense. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, Ryan.
You want to do your quick fire round?
Yes. So to just kind of end out the session, just really quick questions, just quick, simple answers, just to sort of finish it out. But who is in your tribe? Like, who do you follow?
Wow. I have to do this quick fire. Okay. Who do I follow? I mean,
like someone that inspires you, that anything, or just randomness.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, it's like my wife is my main tribe, and my family, my two daughters and my daughter's boyfriend are really like in my like close tribe. I've studied with so many different people, everything from I'm a fan of research, and I love the research of like these people doing the psi research, like Dean Radin and the Institute for Noetic Sciences, the Heart Math Institute, and all these kind of geeky people on that side. And then I love the work of I think everyone ranging from the work that Joe Dispenza is doing. I had Bruce Lipton as a teacher back in chiropractic college way back before he was known. I think Ken Wilber and people in this trans personal psychology realm. Yeah, it goes on and on. All these kind of people, and then even people you can go back to some of the old school. Obviously Tony Robbins was someone that I've continued to work with for many years. Had a huge impact on my life. There's just there's a big range.
Sure. The list is long. Hey, that's good. Are you reading anything right now? And if so, what are you reading?
I'm reading a bunch of things. I'm going back and reading a couple of let's see, what are some of the things? I love Cindy Dale's stuff. There's one on energetic boundaries that I'm reading right now. I love Power versus Force is another one I'm revisiting. Hawkins' work, Claire Graves on spiral dynamics. I'm revisiting that, some of the stuff. And what else? I don't know, I'm blanking, but
those are good.
That's good stuff right there. Power versus Force definitely piqued my interest.
Name a vice.
A vice. Oh, yeah. Rory's peanut butter and chocolate ice cream from Santa Monica. Oh my God.
Oh, nice. I'm traveling to Santa Monica.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
You can get it in Santa Barbara and Santa Monica, but if you if you like peanut butter and chocolate ice cream, oh my God.
Okay, perfect. And what's the one thing that you want our audience, kind of a quick takeaway, something that you can give to them?
I think, energy, when we understand that energy is, there's measurable energy, that the universe is entirely made up of energy. The 4.6% or less of the universe is actually physical matter. And of that, at the subatomic level, that's all energy. We understand that when we really understand that energy, everything is energy. And then we understand that by changing the way we interact with that energy and starting to learn more about how we interact with that energy, we can change our life on every level. We can change our thoughts, our emotions, we can change our physical body, we can change literally anything in our life by beginning to become more aware and begin to use energy in more effective, efficient ways. We can literally change the material reality. I think that's the key.
Wow.
Well, you're talking about alchemy, my friend. That's my jam. And one more question. This was in the form that we sent you. What are you grateful for?
Yeah, we end each episode with a gratitude.
Yeah, I am grateful for so many things. I'm grateful for my life, my family, that I'm able to work with really extraordinary people and feel like I'm making an impact and feel like I'm spreading a message about the body, healing, energy, etc., in a way that hopefully more people can open up to. And I'm just grateful that I actually get to wake up every day and feel like I'm creating, and that I'm also helping to create a world that more people will feel like they belong in, and that they feel like they can contribute in, and feel like they can, in a way, succeed and achieve what their dreams are. And
yeah,
I'm going to tell you, it's an honor to actually be a part of you getting the word out on the thing that you're doing.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I love what you two are up to, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from both of you.
Yeah.
Well, today's not going to get any better for me, folks. Abby, what are you grateful for?
Oh my goodness. I think there's been some exchanges I've had in the last few days where people have come to me and they're seeking advice, but I actually throw it back on them and help them get back into their own personal experiences and their own bodies to really figure out that answer on their own. And so I think I'm grateful that those opportunities present themselves, because I feel like in a way that's also what I'm doing, is creating this level where people are starting to seek that within themselves, that they know, help them find the tools that they need to figure it out on their own, that they don't have to find the answers outside of themselves. So just grateful for the reminders and the opportunities. Yeah.
And of course, Ryan, what are you grateful for?
This is going to sound so weird, but I am grateful that True North is a thing. Like, we're coming up on 1 year of doing this, and I remember sitting in a coffee shop with you, Abby, and being like, we should do a podcast, and no one will listen to it. It'll be great. And now it's not just the podcast. We're interviewing people who are,
Yes.
in line with what we're here to do, and we have our tribe of people who have the private Facebook group, and there's more, and we have these weekly calls. And like last night we were on our weekly Zoom call with our tribe, and I was the one getting group therapy and I was able to share about my own stuff. And every time we interview someone like an energy healer or something like that, my own practice like just explodes, because like, John, you've blown my mind like 1,000 times in the last hour. There are so many things like you've either confirmed or turned on its head, or and that benefits all the people that are going to come to me for energy healing as well. And all that happened because we decided that True North needed to be a thing, and now it's a thing. And it's just like this petri dish of amazing stuff that we never predicted could have grown
Isn't
out
that
of it.
so
Here
cool,
we are.
right? How we can have a just an idea or a sense or a feeling and move toward it, and then actually you take a step, you just do something, and something kind of unfolds, and we're taking this like pure, like really unlimited potential of energy and consciousness. There's going to be higher probabilities that certain things can kind of manifest, because there's like probability clouds, but there's also choice points where you can go, yeah, let's do this. Let's try that. And it sort of like, and it opens something up, and it kind of, it creates an opportunity to, evolve into a new area. And we're constantly creating. So just here's to creating.
Absolutely.
That's right, man. I mean, you're talking about literally changing material reality, and that's what we're sitting in the middle of right now. We created basically something out of nothing, and here we are. It's so cool.
Congratulations.
Okay, you really have to go pick up your kid. That's the second time
do.
you have to go off.
So sorry.
Well, guys, this has been John Amaral, and all of your. I'm going to get all your links and all the links to your stuff, and we'll put that in the show notes so you can check that out there. And until next week. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
And go get your kid.
Yeah, that's actually taken care of. That's just sort of my daily reminder. Today I had someone else pick him up because I didn't want to rush.
I just realized
so.
I made you look like a negligent parent. Like, Abby's ignoring her kid on the podcast.
No,
That's
no.
like
the
the
other
main-
parent is picking
Yeah,
him
that's the main focus, right? And everyone's like, is Abby going to get her kid, or what's happening here?
up. Right. Put that in the show notes, right?
Abby got her
Abby-
kid on time.
Abby took care of getting her kid picked up.
That's going in the show notes, literally. I'm going to do that.
For sure, that has to go.
We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. You can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect. That was
What about
perfect.
the gratitude?
This one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.